in my hands like it's no thing. Jacket same color as the smoke stains. Pray to God that I never grow old, but I also pray to God that I grow wings. Damn, can't lie, today was a good day. Fell fly, new cool kicks and a kick-ass ride. And I kick it with my dogs, we just trying to get by. Just a couple of punts, all trying to get by. Just a couple of teens, all trying to survive. Live to the max, cause you don't live it twice. Couple green thumbs, all high as a kite.
Hello! Oh, no, you're not so happy.
Welcome back to another episode of Life to the Max. I'm your host with the most, Max Gross. And today, I have Michelle with me, which is a good friend of mine, stepmom, and she has an amazing story, and I'm, like, super excited to, like, you know, get to know her throughout this, podcast. I hope you guys enjoy the episode. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
This is fun. I've never done anything like this, so it's a little intimidating, but it's fun.
It's more like Gen Z, like, type thing. Like
Absolutely. I'm kind of older. Yeah. That's okay. I'm a grandma. I'm okay being old.
So let's just get straight into it, if you're okay with that. Where are you from?
So I am from West Texas. So, you know, Texas is a massive state, and I grew up... I grew up all the way west, kind of the bottom of the panhandle. It's pretty much cotton fields and tumbleweeds and no trees, kind of a desert area. My dad was a cotton farmer.
Cotton farmer. So, what was the city?
Seminole, Texas.
Town, Seminole?
Seminole. Mm-hmm. Little tiny country town, nothing there but farmers.
Were you helping your father in the field?
I did, yeah. So since I'm old enough, some of the certain technology with cotton farming wasn't there yet. So my dad would drive the tractor and what they called stripping the cotton. And my brother and I would stand outside these trailers that were on wheels that he would dump the cotton into the trailers, and then you'd drag it to the gin to be processed, right? Well, and my brother and I would stand there until the basket got pretty full, and then we'd climb up in it and we tromped it. It's called tromping cotton. So we would jump up and down and smooth and pack the cotton in there best we could so he could put a lot of cotton in there. And my brother would always try to kill me. He would throw me back in the basket, and because we'd know that my dad was about to dump more cotton in the basket, and I'd be like, okay, we got to climb out. He's coming, it's getting full. And so my brother would climb up the ladder first and wait, and then he'd kind of push me back in the cotton, and all that hundreds of whatever pounds of cotton would just dump on top of me. I wasn't going to die, but I was 7, right? And I thought my dad would have been, you know, Dad had a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, driving tractor, or we were to stay out of the way, right? And I just knew that one day I would just suffocate in that cotton, and my brother was kind of mean to me. You know, that's what brothers do, but I survived.
Yeah, and like I have to say this, like those southern farm people, like in those small towns, they're rowdy. They are very rowdy.
We were tough as nails. You know, our parents didn't really parent us, and you know, we were out there chasing rattlesnakes down with a hoe and cutting their head off first and then cutting the rattle off. And we had a shoebox full of rattlers because there was tons of rattlesnakes everywhere. But we weren't afraid of them. We were looking for them because we wanted to get their rattlers. So, yeah, we were rough and tumble kids.
Why do you want the rattle?
Because they're just cool. I mean, if you've ever seen them, you get a really, really big rattlesnake, they're really large. And then the littler ones, and it was just a collection. I don't know. I'm sure people are like, oh my gosh, why'd you kill all those rattlesnakes? But yeah, it was something you did out on the farm when there was nothing else. We had no neighbors to play with, so it was the rattlesnakes, I guess.
So you talk about your brother trying to suffocate you in cotton. So you were 7 years old at that time, usually. Yeah. So how was your adolescence, like growing up in a small town?
So, you know, small town, everybody knows everybody's business.
Yeah.
Well, when I was 13, my parents divorced. And, of course, the whole town knew it. And I say that my parents, when I turned 13, because they had got married really young. My mom was 20 when she had me, and they kind of lost their mind. I think they felt like they had missed out because they got married so young. So they both just wanted to relive their adolescence. So they split when I was 13. Mom started dating guys much younger than her. She was a beautiful woman. And my dad, my brother, when I turned 16, so there was a lot of turmoil in those developmental teenage years, with both of my parents kind of losing their mind and the whole town knowing. They both started partying and acting like fools. When I was 16 and my brother was 18, my mom and my dad married a 20-year-old.
Whoa.
So you can imagine, I'm 16, my stepmom's 20. We hated each other, needless to say. But
Yeah.
so adolescence was rough. In that same West Texas town, when you're kind of a rebel and looking for something to do, because now the rattlesnakes aren't entertaining you, we would climb. You know what a pump jack is?
I don't.
So a pump jack is, you've probably seen them like on TV and stuff. I don't know if they have them around here, but it's a big metal. It looks like a metal horse that does this. It's going up and down, and it's pumping oil or gas from under the ground.
Yeah.
Big metal thing. Looks
Yes.
like like a metal horse, right?
Yes.
So we would, at parties, you'd have to, everybody'd get a keg. I don't know how we bought kegs at 16, but we could drive across to the New Mexico, across the border, and buy a keg at 16, and nobody batted an eye.
These country
Kids, right? And they were just going, as long as we had the money, they didn't care. And we would park out by these pump jacks because there's no trees. So everybody would meet out, pump jack number 1 or pump jack number 2, and everybody would have a party and a bonfire, a kegger, right?
Yeah.
And then we would climb up the pump jacks and scoot down to the head of them and ride them like they were a Six Flags carnival ride or something. And of course, you're drunk and you think you're just invincible and it's fun. Even though my graduating class, 3 years prior to that, kids had done that and got killed because it just kind of grinds you up.
That's what I thought.
Oh, yeah. It's stupid. There's nothing to hang on to. It's just a big piece of metal that you just kind of... And so we knew kids had died of it, but it wasn't going to happen to us because we were smarter, right? I don't...
Yeah, so it's kind of like this generation. There's in like New York, they do something called subway surfing.
Oh, yes, I've seen that.
You've seen that?
Yes. Yeah,
like-
so the same thing. As city kids would do that. These are us country kids. We're going to find some way to entertain ourselves. So, yeah. So that was my adolescence. It was a bit of a mess. Yeah.
But rightfully so, though. I mean, so when I took my psychology class, I took the Erickson's lifespan. When I took my psychology class, I learned about Erickson's lifespan development theory, and then in the adolescence age, you go through role confusion versus identity, and like it seems like you were going through role confusion.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people do. I did the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's and when you don't have some mature adults in your life to kind of speak into your life or help guide you, which we had none. It's a free for all.
Yeah, same for me. My parents were uninvolved, and like I can understand that. Like, so, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I really do. There's a lot in common, just different like scenery. You have the fields, I have the towns.
You have the towns.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what was it like when you like heard that your stepmom was like 20 years old and like you were 16, like in high school? Like did anybody did anybody come at you for that?
Well, there was obviously in school, some nasty things said. I know that they had said, "Oh, didn't your mom used to babysit her when your mom was younger?" And cruel remarks like, "Oh yeah, your mom used to bounce her on the bed. Now your dad is."
Yeah.
I got all sorts of cruel things, and as a teenager, I'm trying to make sense and trying to grow up, but my parents have lost their minds, and so it was tough. My mom ended up remarrying, I guess right before my junior year of high school, and I didn't like him, but at the moment he was good for mom, and I'd kind of I was just a mess. I was just such a rebel and just such a mess. So when she remarried before my junior year, they moved to East Texas, almost Louisiana. And I was living with my dad and my 20-year-old stepmom at the time, and we were not liking each other. So I moved to East Texas with my mom and her new husband.
Okay.
And at least I was able to finish high school and graduate without killing myself.
Yeah, when did you join the military?
So, I think when I graduated high school, from my parents' poor examples, because they just struggled paycheck to paycheck of what to do, and then my mom, no, she wasn't divorced yet again, but so I didn't know anything about college, and I had nobody to explain it to me, but I knew the only way I was going to be able to feed myself is if I went to college, because that was my generation, right? Get a college degree of some sort. I don't think it's necessarily true now, but at the time, just get college and you won't starve, right? So my focus, and of course you think about this before the internet, I would look at the newspapers, because I'm always working. I've worked since I was 15. So I'm looking at the paper and going, where are they hiring? And it was always nurses. There was always the want ads for employment constantly was nurses. And I said, I'm going to go to college and be a nurse. And that's kind of was my driving force, is hunger, because I needed a way to support myself. So that's how I got into college, which, again, I had no idea. I didn't know how to sign up for classes. I didn't know what the credits meant. So I was...
Me too.
It was tough. It was tough getting into it. But I went to college, changed my major a couple of times, and then finally I'm like, nursing is the way. Not that I have... I think some people have great stories of saying, it was a calling. I knew all along I was supposed to be a nurse. That's not, for me, it was going to be a way to pay my bills.
So for me, it's kind of the same thing. Like I told you, like my parents weren't really involved. They put food on the table. So like I had that, and they bought me things.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like, because my parents got divorced when I was 7. So like there was like, a few like issues here and there, and like people always talking, like I would hear different stories as a child, and then it would grow up and I would hear the same stories, and I went through that same phase, real confusion versus identity, and I didn't know my identity, and then I was just like, I'm going to join the military, infantry, I'm going to do it, and when I first got there, I was like, what the hell did I just do?
It does everybody, yeah. No,
But can you elaborate more on like the nursing job? Was it like a CNA job?
So I was in Houston at the time in nursing school, and they had, if you were already in a nursing program, you got hired on like a CNA, but it was they called it student nurse assistant. And so it was a CNA job. So and you think about this, was 89 and 90, those years, I worked, so I was looking at the hospital, they were wanting student nurses, and the 7th floor of this little hospital in Houston was the AIDS floor. So this is 89, 90, the peak of the AIDS epidemic and all this, and everybody was still terrified. Everybody was still weren't sure, like, oh, can you get it just by somebody coughing on you that has AIDS? There was still a lot of fear there, and I said, oh, you'll pay me an extra $1 an hour to work on the AIDS floor? Of course, I'm trying to feed myself and pay for college. Sign me up. So I worked on the AIDS unit, and it paid $9.20 an hour, which was good money back then as a student nurse. So I worked on the AIDS unit, went to school full time. And then once I started into heavier clinicals in nursing school, it was so demanding. I felt like my grades were starting to drop. So I went to a recruiter's office. I said, well, if I join the military, maybe they'll help me. And I went to Air Force recruiter, and they're like, well, we'll pay you a sign-on bonus once you graduate nursing school. But I was like, no, I need money to pay bills now. I can't wait. I'm not going to get through nursing school if I have to keep working like this. And so the Navy had a program, and it was called the BDCP program, which stood for a Bachelor Degree Completion Program. And so if you were in nursing school, they would pay you. You were I guess, enlisted as an E3. So I got E3 pay. I had full health coverage and all that. And then when I graduated nursing school, I was going to owe them 4 years. So it was a great program. So I got
like a trade-off.
Yeah. I was like, and there was a height of nursing shortage at that time. So when I graduated, all my friends from nursing school were like, "Oh, you're an idiot." They said they're getting these huge sign-on bonuses and getting to choose where they want to work. I was stuck going to wherever the Navy told me to go, and I was getting paid a lot less than them.
Well, let's explain it. Let's go a little further than that.
Okay.
What year was this?
I graduated nursing school in 91.
91. That's like close to the Gulf War. I think that is the Gulf War.
Yeah, because it was 90, and so I was considered, quote, active duty in 90, but I was in nursing school. Yeah.
Okay, and when you graduated, what was it a culture shock when you joined the Navy?
It was. I have I had a couple of uncles, but didn't really know them, had done a little bit of service, but we weren't like everybody in the family was in the military. My dad was like mad at me. My mom everybody was angry. Like, why are you doing this? And I'm thinking, you weren't offering to help me pay for college. I really didn't have a choice. So again, it was all driven by, I'm not going to take out loans. I'm not going to ask for money. I'm going to do this myself. So my first assignment was in Oakland, California. Back then, there was a big Navy hospital, Oak Knoll. And that was a culture shock. I lived in Texas my whole life. And here I was 22 going off to California. They assigned me to a med-surg unit. 22, I was an officer. So I was an ensign, like 01. And I've got these corpsmen, the enlisted, were like the medics in the Army, your corpsmen. And, some of them older than me, and they're, yes, ma'am, and saluting me. And I'm thinking, how did I get here? What am I doing?
Oh, you were getting saluted at?
Yeah, because I was an officer.
You were an officer. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep, I was an officer. I was an 01. Funny story. So if you graduate, if you're like a nurse, a doctor, dentist, attorney, those high demand that's hard to get them into the military, you go to OIS, which is Officer Indoctrination School. And it's 6 weeks, and they teach you how to, be an officer. And so we get there, and they're like, okay, this is your uniform. We have all these classes to go through. And this is how you salute, and it's hilarious. So I'm walking across the grinder there where we'd have to march, and an OCS student. Now, OCS, those are going to be your line officers. So they're going through. They're not officers yet. They're officers in training.
Yeah.
Well, one passed me, and he saluted me. Well, I'd never been saluted in my life, so I waved at him. And I hear him laughing as he's walking past me. He's like, a new ensign that has no idea what they're doing. And after he passed, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was my first salute, and I missed it. I waved at him. I'm an idiot. So it was kind of funny. But so I went to California. I was working as a nurse, just got my ass handed to me, learning what to be as an officer and as a brand new nurse. It was quite the adventure.
What was the physical training like? And when you got out of the nursing school part, did you have to go through a certain type of boot camp or an OCS?
The OCS. It was OCS. So I graduated from nursing school on a Friday. That Monday, I was in Newport, Rhode Island, going through OIS. And we had physical therapy, we had some PT to do. Of course, you went through boot camp, so I didn't have to go through boot camp. So they didn't yell at us and they didn't scream at us. We did have to exercise, but they couldn't scream and yell because we were all professionals and we wouldn't have taken it. We're like, no, I'll go somewhere else and make twice as much money. So it was a little different. Yeah. My husband, when you talk to Chris, he'll laugh because he went to boot camp. He was an enlisted.
Oh, he was?
He was a medic. So he laughs about, oh, you're Club Med, OIS, going through the Navy.
Yeah.
So it wasn't Club Med, but, we did. It was fun.
And what was Rhode Island like?
Oh, it was so cool. It's, that's the only time I've ever been there. I've always wanted to go back. It's beautiful. And I went in the summer, so, the season was a perfect time to be there. I skipped out on my military law classes and would go sailing. And I'd have somebody sign me in. This is before computers, right? I'm like, sign me in for that class. I'm going down and doing. So I embraced being a Navy officer 100% by learning how to sail.
Yeah, it seems like that's I was gonna like do green to gold. That's called like switching from enlisted to officer. I was gonna do that when I got to the like special forces. That was my plan. Like, but I wanted to pass special forces, and then I wanted to like become a Green Beret and all those things. But unfortunately, got it.
Had different plans.
Yeah. So when you got to Oakland, were you assigned like to a certain ship?
No. So as a nurse in the Navy, it's pretty hard to get on a ship. Because there's just few and far between. You think of a carrier. So a Navy carrier has probably 5,000 people working on the ship.
That's a little town.
Yeah, a little small town, right? And those carriers, there's one nurse. And it's an administrative role. And then the IDCs, independent duty corpsmen, your chiefs, your higher ranking enlisted, they're doing most of all the medical work, and you're just administratively kind of being over stuff. So I knew my chances of getting a carrier were probably, and most nurses in the Navy can go through the whole time and never step foot on a ship because you're in hospitals, you're in clinics, and you're in other things. So after Oakland, then I had married my college sweetheart. And I was young and stupid, and I just married him because he was model material, and he had lots of muscles,
really?
But he was a real
Chuck
jerk.
Norris?
Yeah, he was, all that. And it was just all pure lust, right? The marriage was. So we were married 2 years, and then he found a girl when we moved to California that was prettier than me, so he dumped me like a rock. But in California, so I was like, oh, I'm going to be one of those Navy people. I'm going to leave a guy in every port. Really? Is this what my life is going to be like? Yeah. So I left and went, next assignment was Guam. And so after my divorce, I feel like a failure and just an idiot and, all these self-talk that you do to yourself. And I called the detailer. They help you find your next assignment. And I said, where's the furthest place in the world you can send me? And she said, well, and at this time I'm an ICU nurse. And she said, well, with your experience, she goes, I could send you to Diego Garcia. And that's a little island in the middle of the Indian Ocean. We've got a Navy hospital there, and it just has 2 flight nurses. And she goes, you, with your ICU, you could become a flight nurse, and we could send you there. And I said, sign me up. And she said, well, it's on a rotation, so the next rotation is not for another 6 months, but I'll put you in 6 months to rotate there. And I'm like, nope, I just got a divorce. I'm mad at the world. I need to get out of California. So she goes, well, I could send you to Guam. And I go, what's Guam? I'd never heard of it. Mm-hmm. So again, I'm this country, girl, this farmer's daughter. I just got out of Texas. I've been in California. I know nothing. And so she sent me, and I think I was gone in about 6 weeks. I was off to Guam. And I worked ICU there in Guam, and that's where I met my current husband.
I was going to get to that because Nick, your stepson, told me that you guys got married in Guam.
Well, we met in Guam.
Oh, you met in Guam.
We met in Guam. We worked together. I'm going to have to correct that, young man. So no, we met in Guam and started, going out. And again, I was at not a real good spot in my life. I was kind of mad, and I'm a Christian. I grew up knowing who God was at a very young age, and I know how I'm supposed to live, and often I just go to the opposite of what I'm supposed to do, and I am the biggest sinner you'd meet, right? And especially through my adolescence and young adulthood, I chose the wrong path often, and even knowing that I was deeply loved by God and He was watching me, I often went the wrong direction, and I think He laughs at me sometimes. He knows how incredibly stubborn I am, and so Chris and I met with me in not in a good state. And then we find out that, and we were kind of, I don't know, I was like, are we going to stay together? I'll probably never get married again. All men are jerks. I'm just going to have fun and party, and
That's
I don't care.
valid.
Right?
valid.
That was kind of my attitude, and that's how we met. Well, then we find out that he's going to be a daddy. And this whole thing, because it's a long story, but he was in the military, and then in the Navy, he went to Great Lakes to process out. And in his processing out, guess what? There was a baby created that we didn't know about. And so when this all came out, I think I've told Nick this several times. I 100% believe that there's never a child born by mistake or accident, ever. And I've told Nick this when he was little. I said, it takes 2 adults to consent to sex, but then it takes a powerful God that breathes your spirit. If God chooses not to breathe a spirit, because I'm more than this flesh and blood, I am who I really am, who I truly am is my spirit. And that was breathed by God. And I said, Nick, God wanted you here. And Nick's our little angel, because the reality of him coming into our life changed mine and Chris's mindset.
Wait, Nick's not your stepson?
He is my stepson.
Oh, he is your stepson?
He is. And so when we found out that Chris was a daddy, life got real serious. All of a sudden, life was serious, because a human was coming into this world that was Chris's son. And what were we going to do about it? It was, I know there's nothing that you would tell me different, that God didn't plan that, because I think I was probably headed to self-destruction and
partying.
And I was just being an idiot, and the gravity and the heaviness and the bigness of a human life that I knew that God permitted, that there was no mistake. So Chris and I, at that time, we said, okay, what are we going to do? There's this little boy, and that's your son. What are we going to do? And so we prayed about it. Life got serious. So we found a church. We had friends praying for us. What are we supposed to do? And I had orders that I was supposed to be leaving Guam and go. And now Chris is out of the military at this time, and then I was supposed to go to Tennessee, more kind of an administrative type job there. And we said, we can't, because this little boy's going to be in Illinois, and we would just be financial parents. We would just send money, but we wouldn't be able to be involved in his life. So I called the detailer and said, if you can get me in Great Lakes, I'll stay in the military. But if you can't get me to Great Lakes, I'm resigning my commission and getting out of the Navy. That's how serious we were just going to move to where Nick was. And so she canceled my Tennessee orders and gave me Great Lakes orders. And we moved to Great Lakes and began having Nick every weekend, and became as much involved as we could in his life. And that was the best thing we could have ever done. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a beautiful story.
Yeah.
Honestly, man, I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
I mean, a little tearjerker right there.
Well, and I know, I tell Nick all the time, I'm like, man, God put you in my life. And Nick was 11 months old when the first time I got to hold him. And I've never, they say love at first sight, I never had that with any guy I ever met, but it was love at first sight. I mean, like when I held him, like he was my son just as much as his mom's. To me, I'm like, I gave birth to him. I'm like, how could you ever in your life love anybody more than, and then God blessed us with children, and you think, I love this child so much, there's no way I could love another. And then God increases your capacity, and you're like, okay, I can love 2 at a time. And then God gives you another, and like your capacity, it doesn't make sense. I mean, and from our mind, but like God he just increases your capacity for love and for forgiveness. And so, yeah, and me and Nick's mom have a great relationship, and it wasn't always that way. There was difficult years, a lot of emotions involved and stuff like that. But
There always is.
Always, it's always rough. But it's all worth it, right?
There's just this crazy thing we have, like a roller coaster called this life, and like
do.
you got your up and downs, your swirls, and all that stuff, and
Absolutely.
loops, and usually it ends, and then stay, and then it just goes again. Yeah.
It does. It does.
So, how long were you in the military?
20 years.
So there's two things I want to talk about that I kind of think it's really badass. Like, you have a scuba license. Like,
I do.
You
I'm an advanced diver. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what a man that I look up to very much. He was in the military as well, and he went to scuba school in Key West.
So much fun.
Yeah.
It's funny because growing up in West Texas where there's no lakes or rivers or anything, I was always a little timid around water, and I wasn't, we'd go water skiing when I was a teenager, and I could water ski, I could swim, but I was a little timid around the water where my brother and sister were both like fish. They would just jump to it. So when I got scuba certified, my family was like, "You're what? You're going underwater and you're what?" And I'm like, "I will scuba dive over swim any day." I said, because my eyes aren't, I've got the mask on, so there's no water in my eyes, there's no water in my nose, I've got a little breather, I'm breathing my air, no water's getting out of my mouth, I've got fins so I can, superhuman go through the water. I'm like, I'll scuba dive all day, but I don't really care to swim.
Now, were you close to your family this whole time?
I would keep in touch with them. Yeah. My mom remarried and then divorced, and then my dad had several different girlfriends, and then he ended up marrying. My mom just recently died. She died in February, and February 13th. Yeah, it was. I'm still grieving. Grief is a bizarre thing, and I was reading a book by C.S. Lewis on his grief when his wife died, and he said, when somebody that you love dies, so they're not here on earth, and your brain, it takes a while to catch up with that. Especially, I'm 57 years old, so for 57 years I've had my mom, and we're not always close in miles, but I could pick up the phone, I could text her, and then her absence, so you still love the person that died, right? You don't quit loving them, but that love doesn't know where to go. There's nowhere for it to land, and I never understood that because my mom grieved her mom and dad and her brother, and I'd always say, are we not enough? I mean, what about us, the grandkids? Are we not enough to fill that void? And it's not that you're not enough, it's just that love is for that person. And so it kind of floats around. It's unguided love for my mom, and it just kind of lands on everything. And it just, I don't know where to put it because it's for her. So that grief is very real, and it's walking through that. And I think with my faith of knowing I will see her again in heaven, because we are spirits, we're not flesh and blood only, that's a comfort, but it doesn't take away. I mean, I still cry every day a little bit. It's not as long, but I'm and then the whole grieving process, and then I'm mad, and then it's still right at the surface, and I think it'll be with me forever. Just I can have joy and happiness and good times, but that grief, man, it's a lot.
So, first of all, I'm very sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
And last year my stepdad passed away, and it was strange to me because he was like an alcoholic, but he was like super nice guy. Would get his shirt off of his back, and it was hard for me. It's I never cried or anything. I'm very hard with grief and stuff. A lot of my friends passed away with overdoses and stuff, and but when my stepdad passed away, my mom was just crying on the phone, FaceTiming me, and I'm just stoic, and I can't, I don't know how to react, So what I did is when I hung up the phone with my mom, I played his favorite song.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and I was like, maybe this can get me closer, and it did.
I love
and
that.
what I would do is I would think of all the happy times I had with him. You know, like I'm not a funeral person guy. I don't really like going to funerals because I like thinking of like the happy times I had with that person. So I mean, it was hard to like it still is a little bit.
Sure.
Like, I told my buddy, like, because we used to party in his garage, and like he was awesome. You know, just awesome dude. Super nice to my family. Like treat us like his kids.
Love that.
Yeah. And he died in the most cruel way. He died with bone cancer. He didn't even know.
Oh.
He went to the doctor, and they were like, "Yeah, you're
covered.
You're gonna die in 48 hours."
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's like it's still difficult to this day, but I try to think of the happy times I had with him. You know, like he like came to my the cord when I got my blue cord for infantry.
Nice.
You know, my graduation.
Yeah.
You know, he was always there for me. So and I hadn't seen him in like 3 years. So that was another thing.
Yeah.
That like it just like hit me like a ton of bricks. But I like you said, he was a spirit. Like I still feel his spirit sometimes.
Absolutely.
And I have a blanket that he gave me. Well, I think I stole it from him. I can't remember.
Dude, did you really give it, or did you just acquire it?
It's a Mexican wool blanket because he was
Oh.
Mexican. He was from Texas as well.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Longhorns fan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he was from Texas as well.
I love that.
And he had this like amazing blanket, and I have pictures of it like when I was in the military.
I love
I
that.
have pictures of it like when I was like, you know, growing up, and I have it in my room right now.
See, and I think you've got it. That is exactly with grief. Like it's, and I think I've had to learn that of like talk about her of the funny things she did or said, and like these rings are hers that I'm wearing, and like I just wear them and look at them and touch them, and I'm like, and just remember all the good stuff, and that their spirit's still with us. Yeah,
it's weird that tangible object can like bring it closer.
It
to
does,
someone.
absolutely.
Yeah. So so you end up moving. So let's like circle back. Okay, so you end up moving to Grays Lake because they gave you Grays Lake, correct? Yep. And you served your 20 years. Nick told me that you were in a very high position in the military. Is that
I
correct?
retired as a commander, which is commander. I was an 05 when I retired. So for the Army, that's Lieutenant Colonel. Yeah.
That's Colonel Smith to me. That's the guy I was talking about.
Yeah.
He was my old battalion commander.
Wow.
So how many people did you have under you?
Gosh, it depends on like where I was. When I was on the ship, so I did get on a hospital ship. It was just a 3-month Pacific tour of when we were in Germany. So circle back. So 10 years. So 10 years active duty, and then started having babies, and so I got off active duty and rolled to being a reservist. And while I was in the reserves, we were living in East Texas, and I would do my drill weekends in Shreveport, Louisiana. There's so much. I mean, Chris and I need to write a book, but so we were both working in the ER as nurses, civilian, but then I was in charge of the reserve unit in Louisiana. So 1 week in a month I'd do that, and then we owned restaurants, and we were raising babies and homeschooling the kids, and we would, we were idiots, but we were just super crazy busy. And so I got called to active duty. I was running between restaurants. I'd gone to one to pick up a case of pepperoni to bring it back to the other. I get a call from BuMed, and he goes, how would you like to go to a 1-year all-paid vacation to Germany? And I said, no, thank you. I'm really busy with restaurants, and I work at the ER, and I'm in my unit. And he said, well, we're looking for ER nurses, and I've got 12 nurses on my list, and I need 6. And I said, well, I'm a commander, and I'm expensive. So find you a cheap lieutenant nurse, and, you send them. And he said, well, if I can't find anybody that meets the spot, I'm going to call you back, and you're going to have to go. And I said, well, I'm sure you can find a cheaper nurse than me. And he called back 3 days later and said, pack your bags. You're going to Germany in 6 weeks. And so at the time, and this is, maybe Chris can tell you this part, we were living in the restaurant because it's so much to unpack. It's hard to say, but
you lived in a restaurant?
We had to live in the restaurant because, there's so much. So we had 2 small pizza restaurants, and we were doing all the crazy living in the house and ER, pizza restaurants, reserve. And then I had to go to Pensacola to work at the Navy Hospital for a 3-month little special job there. And while I was gone, and left Chris unattended. And I've learned you don't leave him unattended because he gets into stuff. And when I get back after the 3 months, of course, he had all the kids. Anna was doing that. He goes, I found a restaurant in Indiana, and it's a bargain. And we're moving to Indiana, and we're going to run this new restaurant. It's fine dining. It's got a martini lounge. It's really cool. And I was like, oh, my gosh. And so we put the sisters in charge of the larger pizza restaurant. We sold the small pizza restaurant to friends, and
was the pizza good?
It was amazing.
Okay.
It was the best. We only used quality ingredients.
It's a pro.
It was,
it's a pro. I'm not saying he's a pro. That's definitely a pro. Free pizza.
We did. We ate lots of pizza. We had lots of good food. We were never lacking in the food area. And so
that's one thing you were worried about.
No, they was totally taken care of. So my husband has the entrepreneur type. I'm not as big of a risk taker as he is, but I kind of jump on some of his risk, and it's been fun. But so we put everything in place, put friends to rent our house from us, friends of a friend, thought they'd take care of the house. We moved to Indiana. We changed everything over. Well, this was not pizza. This was steak and lobster, fine dining, and we hired a new chef. We changed the menu. We got live bands in. In about 9 months, we were totally broke, and it ate us alive. So we closed.
What year is this?
It was 2009.
Okay.
2009. Yeah. 7, something like that.
That's when the crash happened, the stock market crash. Or the
okay,
home
so
market.
no, it was before that. No, it was 2005. That's right, 2005. 2005. And so we lost lots of money, all our savings. We could always do these things because we both had good W-2, as working as nurses, being in the military. We had money to risk, and we always lived below our means. We didn't drive fancy cars or anything, didn't have a fancy house. So we invested it in restaurants and different things. This restaurant smacked us, taught us a big lesson. So we closed the door. Everybody in the world was suing us, from the people we were leasing the building from to everybody in the world. Everybody was after us, and we had no money. So we moved back to Texas, and the house we rented to the friends of a friend had destroyed the house beyond living in. And so our one restaurant we had left, which was the big pizza place, we had a room attached to it, was called the Tuscany room, and you could rent it out for parties and stuff. So I got there. Chris was dealing with legal problems and us being broke again. And I went back to Texas and told the manager of that place, I said, I'm renting a storage shed. We're moving all the tables and chairs out. Cancel all the parties for the next year. I said, we're going to live in the Tuscany room because our house is destroyed beyond living in, and we're broke, and we got to start over. So we moved into the Tuscany room, and the kids, their memory, they think it was so much fun because there was no it was just one big empty room. And so all our beds were lined up and we'd all sit up and go, good night, good night, good night. And we'd all lay down. It was just like, it was the funniest. They think it was, oh, that was so much fun. And then we could just go into the restaurant and we would just go to get whatever we wanted, you know, and the cook would make us whatever. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if you only knew what a nightmare. So this is the living condition we're in when I get the call saying, you're going to Germany. You got 6 weeks. So I packed up my bags. Chris and the kids took me to the airport. And with the problems we went through in Indiana and that restaurant and the financial strain and the lawsuits and everything that was going on, it was very stressful on our marriage, if you can imagine.
Yeah.
And so I felt like God was trying to crush me. I was like, I didn't know. I thought, like, is God mad at me? Did I do something wrong? I was like, because all of this, we're living in a restaurant, and then you're going to say you've got to leave your children and your husband. And you're going to be gone for a year to Germany. I mean, like, it to me. And so when I got on that plane, that was, you could walk somebody all the way to board the plane, right?
Yeah.
And Chris and the kids were there, and I remember walking down there. I'm like, I don't think I'll come back. I'll finish up this. He can raise the kids. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done.
Wow.
I mean, that's kind of, I just didn't know how I could manage, you know, there was just too much to think about. And looking back now, I go, okay, God rescued me. He pulled me out because he knew I was at a breaking point. And so I got to Germany and I worked, it was called the DWMIC is what we called it, Deployed Wounded Warrior Management Center. Deployed Wounded Warrior Management Center. And so all the Army nurses, this is an Army hospital and it's Landstuhl. And Landstuhl, yeah. So all the Army nurses were deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan, and so they didn't have extra Army nurses. So they sent us a group of us Navy nurses that had the ER skill, and we were kind of like in these trailers outside the ER, and we ran this 24-hour service of bringing all the wounded guys from the Horn of Africa, Bagram, wherever they were at overseas, and we'd process them here. We loaded up these buses we made into 2-tier ambulances. So they'd bring the wounded into Anderson, the Air Force Base.
I'm sorry, so these are the people that were like hurt more, they would go to Germany. I remember like that. I remember that vaguely, like that they were saying like if you get hurt, you're going to Germany. Yeah.
So we were there processing that. So you know, and you could get blown up and lose all 4 limbs, and they could save you. I mean, you would live, but then they would wrap them up, send them to Bagram, do a couple of surgeries, get them stable enough to send them to us in Germany. And so it was like a controlled mass casualty daily of bringing wounded warriors, some mental, some, you know, small things, but still couldn't be there that needed to come out of. That was probably the hardest. And you would either meet the bus and kind of eyeball as people were coming in, making sure they were going, yes, he needs to go to the ICU, or no, this person, you know, we need to switch things up. So you kind of triaging real quick to make sure everybody was going to the right place. It was a challenging job, but
I can imagine.
Very rewarding.
I can imagine if you like save a soldier too, like that's like the best feeling.
Oh yeah. I mean, and that was a hard going. You know, you see a Marine that has had his legs blown off and saying, "Hey, can they fit me with prosthesis so I can go back? I hate leaving my guys." And you're like, "What?" I mean, that was the spirit. That was their mentality. It is. You guys are just. It's a different, as a female and as a nurse, I'm not, that's not me, but I want to take care of those that are doing that because it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I can't wrap my mind around it. So it was my privilege to care for all the wounded guys and gals. Yeah.
So you get back from Germany. Nick told me recently that you had breast cancer twice.
Yep.
Yeah. And when did this occur first?
So that was in 2018 was the first time. And I was, I'd worked a shift as a nurse, and I was retired out of the Navy because I retired from the Navy in 2013.
Yeah.
So now I'm working civilian. And I had put my pajamas on, and my hair was long at the time, and I kind of brushed my hair off my shoulder, and I'm like, oh, there's a little, what's that? So I found the lump. Now, I had changed jobs and had missed my mammogram, but I was pretty good at, I try to take care of myself, right?
Yeah.
But I'd missed one just of the busyness of life, and got in right away, and sure enough, yeah, it was cancer. It had moved to my lymph node, so it removed all the lymph nodes, and they did, so it did surgery. I just went ahead. As a nurse, I was like, okay, if this is going to, I don't want this to kill me. You know, you're all of a sudden faced with mortality. And I'd had a friend die of breast cancer. So I know it is lethal, but it's treatable if you get it early. Mine wasn't early, but it wasn't super late. And so.
What stage were you?
2B, something like that.
I have no idea what that means.
Yeah, and I'm not an oncology nurse. So I was like just a regular civilian. I would say, yes, I'm a nurse, but I know nothing about cancer, you know. And I've never worked that area. I've worked with young guys that get blown up and stuff. I don't, you know, so that was a learning curve for me. But I said, let's be aggressive, you know, bilateral mastectomy. Let's cut everything off. Let's not have any. So again, I'm thinking, I'm taking care of this.
Yeah.
So cancer. So it came back in 23, which I was like, what? You know, I did everything they told me to do. I did the surgery. I did radiation. That's why I have this chronic cough. Kind of messed up one of my lungs.
Did you do radiation the first time?
I did. And so that was kind of another like, okay, now is it going to kill me? You know, like now is this the time? So facing that, you know, you start going, what do I need to do different? And you know, and I also think healthcare has changed after COVID. Like nobody trusts the healthcare system anymore because we didn't manage it well. We as a system, as healthcare workers,
Absolutely not.
It was mismanaged, but we didn't know. You know, we had no idea. We did not know. Nobody knew. How could have anybody known? But so going through cancer at pre-COVID and post-COVID was a little bit different. So this time I had to do surgery and chemo. And of course, I have to show you
23
in 23. Mm-hmm. I'll show you pictures of me later of when I was bald. And so this is since May of 23, my hair that's grown back. So it's grown back pretty fast. Thank you. And it came back a totally different color. I was always kind of a dirty blonde. And now I'm like, what's this? It's like salt and pepper. I don't know.
It's very chic.
Very chic, right? And I'm like, okay, I'll take salt and pepper.
Well, like that's amazing that you had the strength to go through that. I mean, like, I don't know how serious cancer is at times, but then like I find out when I was like, holy crap, like this is like a serious thing, and breast cancer is no joke, and like for you to like beat it twice, are you like one question I was going to ask you was, have you ever been mad at God?
Oh yeah. And he's big enough; he can handle my anger.
Yeah.
I've been mad at God before, and I've told him, and you know, you know, you said, "Oh, you're so strong, you beat this twice." Well, I am a wimp and a weakling. That I know only by God's help that I've gone through this. But yeah, I've had that anger of like, why? You know, why did I get it the first time? Why am I getting it a second time? And I kind of this last time came to, why not me? I mean, like, am I better than somebody else? That I'm not. Why not? I have done nothing in my life that, you know, and I used to have that conversation because my mom smoked her whole life. You know, she started smoking when she was 13, and she never had a cough in her life. I had this chronic cough from radiation. I'm like, why is that so unfair? You've got great lungs and you're still smoking, Mom. And I have this wimpy lung because I had cancer, and you know, it's easy to get into those, but then I've kind of reversed it and said, you know, I've had other Christians say to me, you know, oh, well, God knew that you were strong enough that you could do it. And I said, I kind of flipped things on the head. I said, I think he knows what a stubborn person I am, and he knows how weak I am. So I don't think he made me, because he's a loving God, but I think he allows things, and I think he allowed it because he knows me. And if that kept me in humility and in submission to the kingdom, and I live in a kingdom, and he's the king, and I choose to honor him. I don't always do it. I'm always missing the mark, right? But you go back and say, he is a loving God. Why does he allow things? Like, I'm saying, you're the toughest guy I've probably ever met in my life, just watching your podcast and stuff. I'm like, how do you keep your spirit up? How do you,
I asked the question because I've been mad at God a lot.
Sure.
A lot of things have
Yeah.
came to me, like deception from the closest people you would think that are in my life. Like even from the beginning, like I was dating a girl that I thought was the one, and then I got in a car accident and she's gone 2 months later, and when I was in the hospital, so and that just tests you. It tests you, and then
Yes.
you just keep getting tests and tests and tests, and then you kind of like find like this like middle ground, and then you start like progressing. So for me, it was like, okay, I'm going to use my voice, because a lot of people say I'm an inspiration. I don't like to hear that. I like to hear that like I motivate people. That's my biggest thing I like to hear. And they say I'm an inspiration, and I sit here and I'm like, I didn't go to war. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm just sitting in a chair. What makes me such an inspiration? Do you know what I mean? Like, and then, but I always hear it, and I guess I've accepted it.
Yeah.
So, but I do know that I do know how to motivate people, because I was a team leader in the military.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was only in the military for a year and a half. Like active, and then like a lot of it. Like, if I didn't go to the military and this happened to me, I don't know if I would have been able to like have the intestinal fortitude
Right.
to get through this. And one thing I wanted to say about you, Michelle, is that this podcast, like this whole podcast, from when it started with your parents splitting up, you wanted to eat, and you're like, I just need to eat, so let me do this. You had trouble with like finding college and stuff, because like, I mean, you didn't have like anybody to help you do it. You didn't. I didn't know I had to go to a guidance counselor. Right. So, you know what? This podcast, the theme of this podcast is resilience.
Really resilient.
Resilience. You are a very resilient person, and you're still living life to the max with your family, and I'm blessed to know Nick. I've known him for probably 15 years. I don't know if he told you.
I know that you guys go way back, and I'm like, he is, again, man, God's always had a plan on his life, and I've always known that, and my life would not look the same if Nick wasn't part of it. I know that.
Yeah, and another thing about the theme of this podcast is God has a plan.
Absolutely.
And one thing I always say to people is you have to suffer to succeed.
And you know what the one thing in the Bible it tells us we will do?
What?
Suffer.
Yeah.
I mean, it's over and over. You look, and I've got in my notes, going through cancer these both times, and I can share them with you. I have all of these scripture, and it's all about suffering, but you can suffer good, but it is very much part of the fallen world that we live in. We know on earth we will suffer.
Yeah, you definitely will suffer.
Yeah.
And you mentioned before the podcast, I went to go see Jordan Peterson.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
all about not embracing suffering, but knowing that you're going to suffer in life.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But It's been amazing having you on the
Thank
podcast.
you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I learned a lot more than I thought. I didn't know you were a rowdy teenager, and then you were just like,
Yep.
I need to get my shit together,
That's
and
right.
like go into the military, and then you meet your husband in Guam, and then you stay together because of union for family. Like, that's why you
Absolutely.
stay together, and you just it's kind of like you beat cancer twice, and you're doing all these amazing things, helping out probably some of my friends that were in the military, like that went to Germany, So like kudos to you and everything
Thank
you've
you.
done in your life, and I'm happy we were able to have this conversation.
I'm so glad I finally got to meet you.
Yeah, for everybody who likes this content, please subscribe, like, and comment. Please comment. We love to see it. I answer every single one. And I'm paralyzed from the neck down, breathing through a machine, but that doesn't stop me from following my dreams and doing what I love to do. I don't got any excuse, and neither should you. We'll see you in the next one.
The haters come attack you, gotta bob and weave. Gotta hit 'em where it hurts, like Muhammad Ali. You got a torch on the way, cause it's time to leave. Said the party's never end, and we ain't got to leave. Cause the night's still young, just enjoy the breeze. Damn, can't lie, today was a good day. Fell fly, new cool kicks and a kick-ass ride. And I kick it with my dogs, we just tryna get by. Just a couple of puns, all trying to